Food safety, it should be a concern in your kitchen. It should be a concern if you go on a picnic. Let's find out about food safety in this edition of WJTS in.form as we talk with Jan Dougan. Jan is the Extension Educator for the Du Bois County Extension Service through Purdue. Jan, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Great to be here.
Let's talk about food safety, which I guess, for the most part, we think of it as being in the kitchen, but we need to exercise that if we're out grilling or if we're out on a picnic or maybe even if we're out in a restaurant eating. But let's talk about food safety.
And for holiday celebrations, for
yes.
family celebrations. Cooking is, or maybe I should say eating. Eating is a part of celebrating, and sharing food with family and friends is something we do all the time, every week, every weekend. And we really need to be conscientious about the food safety issues in the home. We're concerned that when we go to a restaurant that they're following the guidelines and keeping the food safe. So we should be just as concerned at home because foodborne illness can happen anywhere.
I don't remember the number, but I thought it's like 1 in 4 people will have a foodborne illness a year. So it's a lot of people at some point will get a foodborne illness.
You're absolutely correct about that. And there are really some basic principles that we can follow at home when we're preparing food to help keep our food safe for our family and friends. And one of those first things I want to talk about today is clean. The word clean. And it starts with hand washing. We all need to wash our hands, and we need to use hot soapy water. We need to use the soap and the hot water. And we need to wash our hands for 20 seconds. Then we need to rinse and we need to dry them. Now, I highly recommend that when we're in the kitchen and we're preparing food and we're going to be inviting guests into our home, that we use paper towels to dry our hands. Okay. At home, I use paper towels all the time to dry hands because it's just safer to do that rather than using a kitchen towel. Because what happens to your kitchen towel, Bill?
You put it right back on the oven rack or wherever you happen to keep it, and it just sits there for days.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We don't change those things very much at home. So it's really important to think about using paper towel for that.
Can I ask you a question about washing your hands? Does it need to be antibacterial soap, or can it just be as long as it's a soap?
Soap works.
Soap, okay.
In fact, antibacterial gels do not replace hand washing. So when we're talking about preparing food and working with food, we really need to use warm water and soap to wash our hands to make sure that we eliminate any bacteria or microorganisms that might be on our hands before preparing the foods. When we think too about washing, we talk about washing produce and the importance of washing produce before cutting it or before using it or preparing it. But, in the past, years ago, we always talked about washing poultry before preparing it. Mm-hmm. And that is no longer a recommendation. So whether you're preparing chicken or whether you're preparing turkey for a feast, you do not wash in cool running water that bird before you prepare it for the roasting pan. So you take it immediately out of its package and put it in the roasting pan. What they found in the research was that the rinsing did not eliminate all the bacteria that might be on there, and you risk splattering the bacteria in your kitchen. So think about turkey preparation, for example. That's usually a pretty big bird that we're getting out, and we're trying to put it in our kitchen sink, and we were trying to rinse it, and that is not recommended to do, because when you would do that and the water might splatter, they have shown in research that the microorganisms could end up 3 feet away in your kitchen somewhere, on a kitchen counter somewhere else from that turkey. So no longer do we wash or rinse. I shouldn't use the word wash because people think we need to use soap and water, right?
Right.
So we need to rinse. Rinse. We don't do that anymore. We just put it right into the pan and get it ready for the oven.
That's going to be a hard habit to break.
Well,
but I got to remember that.
It is, but when you think about it too, is your sink clean? Is your kitchen sink clean?
Yeah.
I mean, we usually wash it down after we do prep work, maybe with the dishwater soap, but do you ever sanitize your kitchen sink at home? Mm-mm. And you know what? It's really easy to sanitize your kitchen sink. You could use a little chlorine bleach. It's about a ½ ounce of chlorine bleach with 1 cup of water. You could put that in the kitchen sink after you've washed it with the sudsy water from the dishwashing sink, and leave it set there for a while, and then rinse, later on, and you're going to be sanitizing your sink that way. So just help in especially when we get into the times of the year when germs are more prevalent, and it's not just microorganisms on the foods, it's things we bring into the kitchen, it's things we have on our hands. So we just need to keep things clean. The separate word I want to use is separate. Not only do we need to keep things clean, but we need to keep some things separate. So raw food and prepared food do not go together.
Okay. You mean like two different cutting boards?
That would be a great thing in your kitchen if you have two different cutting boards. It's even better if you have color-coded cutting boards. So if you have one that you just use for raw meat and poultry, and then you have one that maybe you use for produce, and you keep those separate. Because if we keep them separate, we limit the risk of having contamination from one or the other food. So separating things is important. One of the things I see happening a lot is when someone uses a dirtied plate for prepared food. So primarily I see this when people are grilling. Yeah. So when they want to take a steak or hamburgers on a plate to the grill, they cook them, they leave that plate set by the grill, and then they put the cooked product back on the plate that's contaminated. That is a no-no. We want you to always use clean plates. Never serve on a plate that has had raw meat or raw foods on. So those are some ways that we can separate in the kitchen and keep our food safe. Cook's important. We want to encourage people to use a thermometer. You can't tell when something's done by its appearance. You really have to check the temperature. And if anyone is using this type of thermometer, I want to recommend that you make sure that you calibrate it from time to time. And calibrating it making sure that it's working properly and that you're getting the right temperature. You can do that easily with a glass. So we would take the thermometer out of its case, we would put it in the glass with iced water, and then the temperature would read what, Bill?
Well, I would think 32.
Correct.
Okay.
The temperature would read 32. If it reads 32, the thermometer is correct. It's accurate.
Now, can it be adjusted? What if it's off? What if it's 34?
So if it's 34, you can still adjust it. There is a little bracket under here.
And you just kind of twist it a little bit?
And yeah, you have to get into your equipment probably out in the garage.
Okay, I can do that.
If you can't turn it with your hand, but you usually can turn it with your hand.
Okay.
That little bolt under there, turn that, but then that should read 32. So you want to check to make sure.
And iced water, meaning not ice, but water with a lot of ice in it.
Yes,
okay.
That's correct. Water with a lot of ice in it. Some people might choose to use a digital thermometer, which is really great because you can just turn it on and off and it instantly tells you what the temperature is. So we want to make sure that we do that. We also want to check from time to time the temperature of our oven. And this is an oven thermometer that we would set in the oven to make sure that the oven is operating properly and that we're getting the right temperature. And then lastly, I brought a refrigerator thermometer. So we should have this in the refrigerator to know that our refrigerator is operating properly and it's operating at 40 degrees or below.
Okay, I was going to say, what should a refrigerator be set at?
40 degrees or below.
Okay, but not below 32 because then it's a
No,
freezer.
then it would be a freezer.
Okay.
Yeah, so 40 is a good one to have there. So, so when we're thinking about using this and we're thinking about checking, we want to check to make sure that the meats that we're cooking them to the proper internal temperature. For example, if we're doing a turkey, 165. All poultry, 165 degrees. And we've got charts for all the different meats. So if someone was curious about that, we could help out with that if they would want to call the extension office at 482-1782.
Now, some people like their beef a little on the raw side. Do you still use a thermometer?
You should still check the internal temperature of the beef.
Okay.
Yes.
And what should it be? Who knows,
I
right? Like
don't want to
160?
say because, no, I
No,
think
don't
it's a
know?
little lower than that, but I don't have that temperature with me
So
right
check
now.
it out first. but-
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So chill. Chill is the other thing we want to talk about today. So, which means we want to cool things quickly if we're going to store them and not eat them right away. So if we've made a big pot of soup, like getting ready for whatever, busy times, and we want a big pot of soup that we can eat on through several days, we want to chill that quickly. So in order to chill a big pot of soup, we need to put it in shallow containers. We need to dish it out into more shallow containers. We could set it down in an ice bath. We could put ice in our sink with water, set it down in there so it will cool quickly. We can stir it to help cool it more quickly. We could put it in the refrigerator with the lid off so that it would cool more quickly in a shallow container. But we want to get that temperature down.
As quick as possible.
As quick as possible, yes, we do want to do that. Because bacteria multiplies very quickly. So I've got some beans in this jar, and there's just a few beans in here.
Like 5.
Okay. And in a couple hours, this is how many germs you have. If these beans are germs, they multiply rather quickly,
Wow.
don't they? In fact, if you have one microorganism or one bacteria in 7 hours, you would have over 2 million.
Wow.
It only takes one to get sick. It only takes one for a foodborne illness to happen.
And that can be something as simple as diarrhea.
Oh, yeah.
So, that is a foodborne illness. And,
Yes,
and,
yes. There's all kinds of symptoms that we can have. And sometimes they appear to be a lot like flu-like symptoms. So, when you think about big family gatherings, the time of year they are, and when you think about the symptoms and when flu is, and sometimes it's not the flu, sometimes it is foodborne illness, but
I think a lot of times when we think of foodborne illness, we think, oh, that's really the dangerous, life-threatening sort of illnesses, and it's not. It's just could sometimes more than likely it's a simple sickness that you're going to get. It could be deadly.
It can be deadly.
Yeah.
People have died from foodborne illness. It can be very deadly. So, we do want to take these precautions. We do want to separate our food. We want to cook our food completely. We want to be clean in our kitchens with our food. And then we want to chill properly. As I think we've mentioned, refrigerators should be 40 degrees Fahrenheit or below. And not, again, the freezer would be 0 degrees Fahrenheit. The one thing I want to mention about leftovers, because a lot of times when we have family celebrations or big family meals, we have leftovers. We want to get those in the refrigerator within 2 hours
Okay.
of the meal, okay? So we don't want to leave them set out all afternoon and then enjoy them later on. And some of the foods that we think don't need to be refrigerated really do. When we think about foods that are perishable, like eggs, so anything that has eggs in it should be refrigerated. So pumpkin pies, pecan pies, they should be refrigerated. They shouldn't be left out on the kitchen counter for us to enjoy later on in the day. Just trying to keep those things safe.
And always follow the rules that Jan gives you, and you should be pretty safe. You mentioned the Clorox, the bleach. Clorox brand name. Bleach is actually the product. Can that be used for wiping the counter, for a lot of things? Doesn't bleach make everything white?
Well, it can. It can. So you have to be really careful when you use bleach. There are other commercial products that you can use if you're concerned about that and that would be safe to use. And you can look for products that say kitchen sanitizer on them. They may have a small amount of bleach in them that will help with that. So, you have to be careful. And I know that, when you put bleach on like a rubber gasket, that can, over time, that can wear that out too. So you just have to be cautious. But we also want to try to be clean in the kitchen. So you have to figure out what's going to work in your kitchen and what's going to be safe in your kitchen. One of the other things I see a lot is those dishwashing rags that people do not change them up regularly. And we should really get a new one. After every use. We really should, because there's germs that stay in those, and that can be really nasty and just spread more germs everywhere. So, just some things to think about. And I guess one of the last things I want to leave people with is leftovers. Because with every family meal or celebration, we have leftovers, right?
Right.
And we need to be cautious about how we handle leftovers. We need to cool them quickly, as we mentioned already, but we also want to do something with them within 4 days.
Okay.
So, it should be think about that as a 4-day rule. So if you're not going to eat them the next 4 days, then you might want to think about freezing part of it. And freezing it appropriately so it maintains quality and it's safe in your freezer. Or you might want to give it away to other family and friends so that they can enjoy it in the next 4 days. But we really want to keep that guideline, is to use those leftovers up in the next 4 days.
All right, Jan, thank you very much.
All right.
Food safety, please practice it in your kitchen as you're out and about cooking. Our guest has been Jan Dougan. She is the Extension Educator for Purdue Extension in DuBois County. Hope you learned something today. Join us again for WJTS in.form. We're local people watching local people.